Hi there. Today I'd like to share with you the story of the fisherman and the businessman. It goes like this. One day, a fisherman sat on a beautiful beach. His fishing pole was propped in the sand beside him, and a solitary line cast off into the surf. He took in the afternoon sun and dreamed of the big fish he'd soon be catching and bringing home to feed his family. It reminded him of a song. Sitting here by the sea, just fine for me. Sitting here by the sea, gonna feed my family. When you got no place to go, you can just take it slow. Sitting by the sea, sitting by the sea. Just then, a businessman was walking up the beach. He was stomping away the stress of another hard day at the office. He looked ahead and saw this fisherman just sitting there. And he wondered, well, what is that man doing? Then he decided to give that fisherman some advice. He approached the fisherman and he said, "What are you doing here? Doesn't look like you're going to catch many fish that way. You should get to work." And the fisherman nodded his head and smiled and said, "Then what would my reward be?" Well, the businessman decided to share some wisdom with the fisherman. Well, then you could catch more fish. And when you catch more fish, maybe you could buy yourself a net, cast it off into the water, and get even more fish. The fisherman nodded his head and smiled again and said, "Then what would my reward be?" And the businessman explained to him, "Well then, you'd catch even more fish. Maybe you could hire some people to come and work for you, and they could do most of the work." And the fisherman nodded his head again, smiled again, and said, "Then what would my reward be?" And the businessman replied, "Well, obviously, then you could hire more people, catch more fish, get a boat, and head out to sea, where your nets and your lines would catch more and more and more and more and more and more and more fish." And the fisherman nodded his head, smiled, and once again asked, "Then what would my reward be?" And the businessman looked down, shook his head. At this point, he was getting a little frustrated. His message was not being received. Well, then you could get a whole crew and more boats and send them far and wide and catch millions of fish. You'll be rich. And the fisherman nodded his head, smiled yet again, and asked, "Then what would my reward be?" And the businessman replied at this point, steaming mad, stomping his feet, "Don't you get it? With all that money, you could send your ships everywhere. You'd be rich beyond your wildest dreams. You'd have so much money you wouldn't know what to do with it." And yet again the fisherman replied, "Then what would my reward be?" You'll be so rich, you never have to work another day in your life. You could just sit on the most beautiful beach in the world and never have another care and be so happy. Finally. Well, the fisherman nodded his head, smiled one last time, and asked, "What does it look like I'm doing right now?" Sitting here by the sea, it's just fine for me. Sitting here by the sea, gonna feed my family. When you got no place to go, you can just take it slow.